am the new generation of scary stories. It's time to retire the boring, emotionless voiceovers. With my voice and melody, you will experience the full spectrum of emotions. Subscribe if you like my videos, and also send me your scary stories to my email. And please indicate how you would like me to introduce you in the video. Good luck.
I was in the later years of high school and was home alone. My parents were at a wedding that required them to stay at a hotel, and my brother worked the night shift. At that time, my family lived in a very well-known East Coast city in a blue-collar neighborhood that was starting to take a nosedive. As a teenager, I was a bit of a loner. I wasn't a nerd or anything. I was a big dude who had friends and went on dates, but I'm a natural introvert, so I cherished the rare alone time that I got. This weekend I was looking forward to engaging in my normal empty house routine, play some PlayStation on the big screen TV, then order a late takeout dinner, pizza or Chinese, and pig out while watching some Dragon Ball Z. Then around 2 a.m., fall asleep on the couch with my old dog, Cecil. Cecil was a beagle who was as old as the hills and had been in our family for about 8 years. He was quiet and peaceful and spent his time begging for food and sleeping. Unlike most beagles, Cecil never howled or barked. He was more than content to rest his head on your lap and spend the night there. Anyway, back to the story. It's approximately 1 a.m. I had just finished the last slice of pizza and was dozing off on the couch when I hear a bang coming from the back alleyway. I didn't think much of it. Anyone who has lived in a city knows noises happen at all moments of the night. Cecil's head popped up off my lap and the hair on his back stood up. He was always a bit skittish, so I calmed him down and started dozing off again. Not more than 2 minutes later, I hear another bang, and Cecil did something I never seen him do before. He leapt off the couch and ran like the wind towards the door leading to the basement, barking and growling like a dog twice his size. The look on his face reminded me of German Shepherd Kamina's 9 unit. I'd never seen him like that before, which got my adrenaline pumping. Through the dog's barking, I can now make out a persistent banging. There was a seldom used door in the basement that led to our back alleyway. It was old and rusted and was hard to open, even with a key, and it made a lot of noise. I suddenly realized that someone was trying to break into my house through my basement door. Quick little bit of context for anyone who hasn't lived in a bad neighborhood. If someone tries to get into your house and moves on after they realize the door is locked, they want your stuff. If someone is persistently trying to get into your house, despite the door being locked, well, they want you. Knowing this, I rush upstairs to grab the heavy wood baseball bat that I keep under my bed for situations like this. Then I head down my basement. I probably should have ran, but I was a macho teenager with a tough guy complex, and plus I had nowhere to go. While I'm heading down the stairs to my basement, Cecil blows past me with the speed and aggression of a dog half his age. Suddenly, I hear a man's voice say, "Oh crap," and the banging stopped. I didn't call the cops or anyone else, which was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. I just sat her day up for the rest of the night with a bat in hand. My brother came home that morning, and I told him what had happened. We went to the basement door to take a look, and when we gave it a tug to open it, the whole door fell off. This psycho was one good job away from getting in my house, but old Cecil scared him off. I'm pretty sure that lazy fat old dog saved my life. When I tell this story to people, they dismiss his actions as a dog doing what a dog was supposed to do. But when I tell you that Cecil never barked or moved that fast in his life, you can take that to the bank. It was almost like he knew the urgency, like he knew that door was gonna give. A few years back, we had to have him put down cause he just had no will to live anymore. Before the injection, I got a moment alone with him. I thanked him one last time for his friendship and for what he did that night. At this point, I was a grown man with a wife and kids. I'm convinced none of that would have happened without old Cecil. Thanks, pal. I miss ya. A few years ago, fell divided by early winter of 2019. We were staying with my husband's father. We rented divided by moved into a house a couple of months later, but had been staying there less than a week at the time this happened. I slept in the living room on an air mattress with our kids ages 105. The kitchen, dining room, and living room were all open space. There was a wide counter sink that was a bar on the living room side. He never had stools or used it like that though. Always had a sofa pushed right up to it and had storage for dishes and whatever in the kitchen side. On each end of that counter, there was about 4 or 5 feet of open space between it and the wall. Along the wall directly opposite the front door were 3 doors. Father-in-law's bedroom, bathroom, spare room. From left to right, my husband slept on the tiny spare bed. His dad kept the door to his room closed and usually had a TV and, depending on the weather, either a space heater, window AC unit, or at least one fan going. I don't remember if my husband had the door to the room he was sleeping in open or closed that night, except for that back wall where the bedrooms and bathroom were. The house had windows all the way around it, large, floor-to-ceiling windows along the front and a line of large, sliding windows along each side wall. It was originally built as a sort of camp divided by getaway cabin. Windows equals view. Apparently, he disagreed and was in the process of building a front porch and replacing about half of those windows with wall. However, at the time, the porch was still being built, and none of the windows had been changed or taken out yet. This particular night, I was holding my 18-month-old with a child on each side of us. We had all been asleep for a while when I woke up. I'm not sure what time it was, but the house was mostly quiet and no one else was awake. I lay there, quietly, without moving around, for a little while and couldn't figure out why I was awake at all, much less so alert. Not long after, I decided it was just one of those things, sleep cycles, blah blah blah, and was about to try to go back to sleep. Someone knocked on the front door. Not a loud, banging, beating knock, but definitely a knock. The air mattress was in the middle of the living room area, and the door was on the kitchen side of that dividing counter. I really didn't want to answer the door for multiple reasons. Was in the middle of 3 sleeping children. It was late, it was cold, and we were cozy and warm all snuggled together. It wasn't my house divided by company, and no one else seemed to notice someone was knocking. The knocking went on for longer than I would have knocked on someone's door in the middle of the night, and did get more persistent, though never did turn into banging. No one called out for somebody to answer the door, and no one's cell rang. Finally, I heard someone walking down the unfinished porch. They had stacked some boards and tools and stuff against the front of the house. I heard no clatters or thumps or anything like that, but it did sound like whoever was out there was having to walk on and around those building materials. And then I heard a distinct and firm tapping on the window closest to the kids and me. There was a small, older TV and a small stereo divided by speakers, sitting on 2 small tables about nightstand size. Actually, the one holding the TV was an old nightstand, I had given him years before between the air mattress and the windows. I was facing away from the window, but the tapping was right there where our heads were. An entire wall of floor-to-ceiling windows, and the tapping was done only in the area that would have been in my direct line of sight. If I hadn't been facing the other direction, I don't think I took a single breath until it stopped and I heard footsteps walking away, and they walked across tin all the way to the end of the porch where the driveway was. Walking across sheets of tin makes a pretty distinct sound. I know exactly what it sounds like when someone walks on tin. What I did not realize until the next morning was that the only sheets of tin out there were already in place because they had finished putting it up as a roof over the porch before stopping for the evening, which meant that there were no sheets of tin stored against the wall divided by under the windows with those boards and tools, and whatever else that was there. The only way for someone or something to have walked across those sheets of tin, which I am certain, being the shadow of a doubt, that I heard happening after hearing an unknown someone knock and tap for so long it became unsettling rather than annoying, would have been for them to jump divided by swing up onto the top of the house divided by porch from an incomplete porch floor, and then jump back down at the end. It scares me in a way nothing else ever has, and still does every single time I accidentally think about it. And that's why I'm typing this right now, and probably also why I'll chose just now to let loose the most terrifying, unowl-like sound before transitioning into its usual eerie owl sounds. Back around 1992, I was in high school at that time. I was a sophomore, and unlike most of my friends in school, I didn't work the typical high school jobs like McDonald's, Taco Bell, some retail job in the mall, or work at the local grocery store. I was very good with my hands and worked jobs like construction, demolition, flooring, and auto mechanics. All of my contacts I worked under the table. As I started working on some of these jobs at 14, it was beneficial for both of us as I was only called in, needed, and I was the guy willing to only work evenings and weekends. One of my contacts worked doing remodeling projects like at restaurants, bars, retail shops, and typical commercial projects that we could only work after hours. Like I said, that worked out for both of us because I went to school and would sometimes work after school or weekends. For this one contact, it wasn't uncommon for him to leave me alone at a site and have a list of things for me to do alone, mostly demolition work. I did this while the other crew was doing the installation or remodeling work. I was the kid but had their respect because I did what I was supposed to do and did the work of a man without complaints. I got paid good, and in one night, I could make more than my friends did working all week at McDonald's. This one instance, I got a call from the guy I worked for, and he said he had a project for me, and if I could work the following Saturday. I said yeah, sure. He said be sure to bring food and lots to drink as there was nothing nearby. I used to have a small cooler and would fill it with drinks like Cokes, Gatorade, or whatever, plus chips and a couple sandwiches. Back then I could eat a whole pizza by myself and burn it all off. He picked me up that Saturday morning, as I didn't have a car license yet, so he would pick me up and drive me to sites for work and leave me alone there. I rarely worked with his other crews, as they were the more skilled labor guys. I was just the tear-out kid. Here is the part that was my major downfall to this story. I didn't pay attention to where we were going. I was too busy talking to him, and I think we were talking about cars. You see, at the time my goal was to save up enough money to buy an old muscle car and rebuild it. It took a long time to arrive to the site, As we drove up, it was in the middle of nowhere. Now you may not think California has places like this, but back in the early 1990s out in the Mojave Desert, yes. It was big plots of land and homes more than a few city blocks apart. I knew we left the highway and went down a few other two-lane highways for a long distance. I remember he asked me about my drinks, and he pulled out a brand new jug of water that he had in his truck that looked like it had been there a while and told me to take it with me just in case. He said that the water to the house I would be working at was off. As we pull up to the property, he is in a hurry to drop off tools and get to another work site. So I hurry up and help him with things like breaker bars, shovels, pry bar, hammer, broom, several big trash bins, and a small tool bag that I often had with me. He tells me that he will be back to pick me up at about 5-6 p.m. as there is no electricity to this site either, plus it should only take me till then to do what I needed to do. That was always his way of saying, I am only paying you till this time, so you better get everything done by then. It was never too outrageous, and we always had a good understanding on time and tasks. He drove away and I am at this property all alone. I walk into the house. It's mostly empty. My job was to remove all remaining furniture, contents and appliances, remove all the flooring, cut the kitchen and bathrooms, and remove all of the wood paneling. This project was going to be like what we now call a flip. They were going to fix it up and sell it. I ended up using that big jug of water that my boss had given me to wash my hands and face periodically, but by late noon, as most who know the desert, the dryness also starts to take moisture from you, especially if you are working in it. So by late afternoon, I am down to my last drink and I had already ate everything I brought. No worries, I thought. The guy should be here in a couple hours to pick me up. As the time gets closer for them to arrive, I am all done with my tasks. I even sweep the entire place, and it's now ready for the rehab crew to get to work making this place look modern. The time of year I was out here, it wasn't a typical hot desert day. But you know, in the desert, as soon as the sun goes down, it starts to cool rapidly. I had a flannel shirt, but that wasn't enough and it was starting to get dark. This was the time before cell phones were common and, well, there was no electricity, water and phone service to the house. I climbed up to get on top of the roof of the house to get a better look to see if I can see something in the distance, and what looked like miles down I saw a smaller road. That this dirt road lead to and a few homes, but those homes were all in dark. My first thought was hike down to a neighbor's house and ask them to use the phone. The nearest house, no one was home, and this home also looked abandoned. If you remember, the early 90s was the start of a decline of the economy and recession, so it wasn't uncommon for a lot of foreclosed homes in a tract of homes. A lot of those I worked on at that time. I started to think about my options. As darkness fast approached, one was to stay at the house until morning, to hike with what little water I had a few miles in the dark Mojave night. 3, wait until early morning and hike out of there to some sort of civilization. It also suddenly occurred to me that no one knew where I was except my boss. I don't know if he told anyone else where I was, and certainly my family wouldn't miss me until maybe Sunday night. But I didn't even tell them I was going to work there. They knew me and how much I would work to save up for my car, but they never worried about me not coming home. As full darkness was all around me, it was amazing looking out at the night sky, and lucky for me, the moon was bright. I didn't have a flashlight or any way to make a fire. Even though I tried, I was going to make a small bonfire out of broken up construction debris. as the temperature started to fall probably down to the low 40s. Almost immediately I get kind of spooked by the place. It was very odd. Now mind you, I am used to being on sites alone working all night. This was the daytime on a Saturday and bright outside. However, the house was old, dark, musty, and kind of cool inside, the kind of cool that gives you goosebumps. To add to the spook factor, the house, let me describe what I remember about the house. Imagine walking back in time to the 1960s or earlier. Dark green carpet that looked like matted down broccoli. Pine wood everywhere that had a darker stain to it. The wood paneling wasn't the kind used in the 1980s sheet paneling, but actual board paneling, tongue and groove. Old window curtains that all looked like someone's grandma made. Avocado green zinc, stovetop, oven, and the stuff that was left behind like old furniture. A closet full of old stuffed animals that looked to be about 30 years old. The style of this house was like an old western ranch, as there were wagon wheels inside and outside the house. I had an old battery-powered radio, but only could get a few stations, but was just happy for the noise. I started removing all the junk from the house, and as I normally did on a project, if there wasn't a dumpster on site, I made a trash pile. I tore up all the flooring next. To my delight, everything seemed to come up with ease, and it was rip, cut and toss. I took a big demo hammer to the kitchen and tore it apart in less than an hour. My only option was to go back inside the empty, creepy house that somehow seemed even more creepy sitting alone in the dark. At about 8 p.m., the batteries on my radio, which was my only source of little light and noise, started to die. I grabbed an old wooden chair and sit in the living room of this house facing the door. I'm starting to hear wind, odd noises which I assume are animals in the distance, and what sounds like leaves cracking under feet. I am starting to shiver from the cold, so I set off on trying to start a fire in the fireplace. Imagine like Tom Hanks in Castaway trying to start a fire. At least this is keeping my mind of my situation. Sitting in this living room next to the fireplace, the house seems even more darker than it should have. Mind you, in the daytime, the inside seemed dark, so with only the moonlight, I was pretty much sitting in complete darkness. My mind starts to play tricks on me. I am seeing shadows moving outside and inside the house. I am also starting to hear someone talking, like whispers or something. I get up from my chair and yell out hello, and just as I do, I hear something fall from the other side of the house. I run over to the door and go outside again. At least in the moonlight, I can see better, but off in the distance I hear noises and see movement but can't make it out. I have my pile of tools by the edge of the house ready for when my boss picks me up, so I run over there and grab Big Daddy. It was my heavy pry bar that I used in demo. I was ready to defend myself for who or what was out there. I have to keep moving because my undershirt and flannel shirt wasn't enough to keep me warm. The wind was also starting to pick up, and for as far as I could see, no lights around me. I didn't want to try to make it up on the house again, out of fear of falling in the dark, but I get up on top of the gate just to try and gain a little bit of altitude to see if I see some house lights on nearby or car lights. My mind went to the stories that circled around at the time about how people would come up to Mojave Desert and bury bodies, how there were Satanist groups out here, and how people would go missing for no reason out here. Every noise had me on edge, and every shadow had my heart pounding. Now I knew no one was in that house, but I swear I would hear noises from the inside. I huddled up on the front porch looking in the living room window, expecting to see someone at any moment. By around 1 p.m. I look at my watch thinking, this is going to be a long night, as all this stuff only happened since it got dark. I don't know how I am going to make it another 6 hours till daybreak. I start thinking the moment it gets to be daybreak, like the moment light starts to appear on the horizon, I am going to take the little water I had left and walk east. I knew going east I would eventually make it somewhere. The dirt road I was off of, I knew that direction lead to a paved road. Closer to midnight, I am wide awake. My eyes are fixed on the dirt road, thinking that any time now a car would come down it, and maybe they can call for help for me. I remember casually turning to look back into the house, as all this time I keep hearing noises, telling myself maybe a rat or some animal. I see a shadow of a person move from the kitchen to down the hall. I jump up from sitting down and was like, that is not an animal, that is a human. I start backing my way out of the porch towards the pile and trip over debris and fall down on the ground. I get up but fall again. It was like something pushed me down, or my imagination, but all of a sudden these bright lights are coming closer to me as I am laying on the ground. I jump up and it's my boss. He is looking at me like, what the heck are you doing? I was just so glad to see him. I wasn't mad or anything, just asked him what happened. He said that he was sorry, but he thought the other crew was coming to get me and they thought that he was coming, so no one actually came. He said it wasn't until later in the evening he asked the other crew leader about how far along I got back. He said I didn't go get him. Well, it took him almost 2 hours from where they were working to come get me. He felt really bad and told me he was going to pay me for the entire time I was out there. He also grabbed a can of Coke from his cooler and asked me if I was thirsty, and I drank that all in one gulp. Once we got back towards civilization, he went through a fast food drive-through and I ate like I had never ate before. As he was driving me home, I asked him about the house. I told him how creepy it was. He said he didn't have any information on the house, only just what we were supposed to do. After that, I made sure to always keep extra batteries, flashlight, and double the amount of liquid.